Yeah, I think, for most people, like for somebody who is financially savvy, you receive free money, quote unquote. Ideally, the first thing you want to do is save a portion of that. So once again, talking about habits, it doesn't matter where the money comes from, right? So it can come from the government, it could come from your job, it could come as a gift, but the habit of saving will propel you to automatically save 10%
Yeah, yeah,
of
yeah.
that. And once again, that's the difference between wealthy people who are not wealthy, right? Is that it's on automation. They don't think twice about it. I just pay that 10%, and then whatever's left, I use it to take care of my needs, which, like you said, it's a huge problem in our community.
Okay. Now let me ask you another question. We're talking about habits. Have Can you talk about 3 habits? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
we've already started one with saving, but talk about 3 habits that have to change in order for people to be uh, position themselves for wealth. 3 habits that have to change for people to position themselves to build wealth. Mm-hmm.
Okay. The first one, I mean, I think you talked about that already, which is the saving aspect. The second one is, which is very huge, is investing, right? Most people don't see the need
Okay.
to invest their resources, right? And I always tell people that it's not about how much money you save or you just saving, right? It's what do you do with that saving? And I talk about that in my book, 21 Habits of Highly Broke People, that you can cultivate the habit of saving, but if you're not using that money to actually help you multiply your money, that essentially your money is just sitting there doing nothing, right? So it's
Okay.
one thing to save money, then it's another thing to actually put that money to work for you. And most people, for example, using myself as an example, my savings does not just sit in my bank account, right? I save for emergency, right? And I also save for business and investing, so that when an opportunity comes my way, I already have capital to seize that opportunity. And the reason why most people don't have any, even the best businesses, the best ideas come across their way, is because they don't have anything in reserve. So as you're saving, the second habit that you ought to actually take seriously is now finding different vehicles to have your money work for you, right? So looking at wealthy people don't save money just because they want to, continue to accumulate money in the bank. They take their money, invest it in the stock market, start a business, or invest in other people's businesses. So yeah, that would be my second habit that I would highly
Okay. Okay. Let's talk about those for
recommend.
a minute before we go to the third one. How do you recommend people start saving? Let's say a single mother, right? Single mother who's just managing. How can she start saving? Or a single father. Let's say somebody who in their mind they don't have money to save. What would you say to them?
I love that question. So here's the thing. Everybody has money to save. Everybody. If you're working, you can save money. Now, when you talk about habit, especially savings, if you've never saved in your life, obviously it's ridiculous for you to try to save 10% because you've never done that. But even if you're making $2,000 every month, the habit of saving just $20 out of $2,000, that's a success habit, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
not about how much money you're saving, but it's about the habit and the continuation of that particular habit, right? So for most people who say they don't have money, if you have cable in your house, then you have money, right? If you have multiple cars, if you have subscriptions, then you have money. So it's not about you not having savings. It's about what are you spending your money on? And I tell people all the time, if I look at your statement or your outflow, I can show you exactly what you need to cut to start saving money instantly, right? So yeah, that's my answer to that question.
Okay. So if you're making any kind of money, you have money to save. And I
Absolutely.
think what I get out of what you're saying as well is that it's about choices. We have to make choices. We have to make the choice to cut the cable off, and just, if you want to watch a movie, watch it online. I mean, I don't know. We have to make choices about what's really a need and what's really a want.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to my example about Atlanta, Air Jordans are not a need,
No, it's not.
especially in the midst of coronavirus.
Right.
That's a want. And we have to change our mindset about what actually is necessary and what we really want to be able to show off. And I say all the time, historically, people of color want to look blessed and not really be blessed. They want to drive the nicest car, but struggling to pay the car note, when you could go get you a 4 or 5-year-old used car and it'll still get you from point A to point B.
Yeah.
So we can save. I think the message is this: we can save, but we have to make choices.
Yes.
You know, maybe you don't need to buy steak every week. Maybe you don't need to buy T-bone steak every week. Maybe you need to live off of chicken and eggs and bologna for a little while, so you can put you, I'm just, you know, that's an extreme example.
Hot dogs.
You know, but I'm just saying we have to make choices. We have to make choices. And I think if we make the right choices, we can find places where we can save money. Now, I have noticed that in the midst of coronavirus, I have saved a lot of money. And I hope that that's the trend for everybody, because we're not spending as much money on gas.
Right.
A lot of people are able to work from home. We're not driving to church.
Exactly.
You know, we're not, which means that hopefully we're not eating out as much. And eating out, you know, is a place where a lot of people can save money. Cable is a place where a lot of people can save money. Clothing
That's a big
is a place where a lot of people can save money. You know, I grew up in a time where women knew how to sew clothes. My mother knew how to sew. Her friends knew how to sew, and many of her friends sold their clothes for their children.
Wow.
Now, some people don't have time for that. A lot of people don't have time for that right now, but it's just an example that it was a choice that they made to make clothes for their children instead of buying clothes for their children.
Yeah.
So it's about, to me, it's about choices. And I'm asking God for the grace to continue to save money in some of these areas, even after, you know, all of the bans and stuff are lifted, because it's been a blessing.
Absolutely.
It's been a blessing. And there's a sense of accomplishment when you're able to save.
Of course.
When you're able to pull up your account and see that you have sitting somewhere X amount of dollars. There's a sense of accomplishment with that. And I want to encourage people to, if you're not saving, start to save, even if it's $20 a week. And you can do it. You can do it. Put it on automatic. Tell your bank, I want this to automatically come out of my checking and go into my savings.
Yeah.
Automate it. Put it on automatic. Definitely. Now, the second thing that you talked about was investing. How does someone who knows nothing about investing, how do they start investing, and where should they start investing?
That's a great question. So, you know, the world has become less complicated today than it used to. So when you take, for example, you know, the investing in stocks or things of that nature, an average person can actually go on their phone and purchase stock, any stock for that matter, right? From an investment standpoint, of course, you know, not getting into the technicalities of you trading and things of that nature, but, you know, short-term, 5 years, 10 years investment, you can do that from your phone without having a stockbroker, which is amazing, right? So that's one angle. Another angle is to look for opportunities and businesses that allows you to partner with them as a means of you getting a return on your capital. And there are tons of that. You know, a lot of people are starting to come up with creative ways to source fund in order to lift off a project, and as a result, you get a percentage on your return. So for us, for example, you know, one of the ways that we've been able to help a lot of people financially is through our projects in Africa, right? We've created several opportunities where people can fund farms. People can invest in our transportation business and receive a return on the investment after, say, 6 to 12 months, depending on the project. So that's in Africa, but even here in America, there are a plethora of opportunities like that as well, right? But of course, like anything, if you're going to be investing, you need to do your due diligence, you need to do your research, you know, to find reputable companies to do that with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You mentioned good stuff. You mentioned investing. You mentioned that most people now can invest right on their phone. There are apps like Stash I use Stash. There's the Stash app. I think there's one. Acorn has one. I don't know what they call it. Robinhood.
Even CashApp. You can purchase stock through CashApp.
Yep. Bitcoin. You can invest in Bitcoin on CashApp. There are many ways that you can do that. The ones that I like also offer education. I think Robinhood, you can take some courses. They have some tutorials to help you assess your level of risk for investing, and then choose your investments based on your level of risk. Stash does that, where you can choose whether you want to invest aggressively, and whether you want to do, something that's mildly aggressive, or whether you want to be, reserved in your investment and just do things that'll give you basically what a savings account will give you. Sure. But the thing is, you can learn, you can educate yourself, right? You can educate yourself. And I think that's something I want people to know. It's easier. You can learn how to invest. It's not something for those other people. The Bible said that when look at the parable of the talents. When the wicked servant said, "You're an austere man, you're a hard man, so I just buried what you gave me so that I could give it back to you," the response was, "You should have taken it to the bank. At least you would have got some interest on it." Yeah. Why didn't you at least take it to the bank to get that 2% interest? So I think that the message of the scripture is that God is into multiplication. Definitely. God is into profit. He wants what he gives us to increase. He wants it to yield a return. And so I want people to change their minds and not think that investing in stocks is for those other people. It's not. It's not. For people of God who understand that God is into interest. He's into increase. He's into dividends. He's into yielding a return. And so if we shift our minds and we understand that even from the scripture, that God said you could have took that talent and you could have got interest on it, that means that part of what God gives us to steward, we should be getting interest on it. Yeah. And I want everybody to understand that. So that means that it behooves the believer to learn about investing, or at least get a broker or an advisor who can help you to do it with some level of intelligence, right? I think God is into that, for lack of a better way to say it. I think he's into that. What would be the third habit? So we talked about savings, we talked about investing. What would be the third habit?
So there's so many good habits, but I think this one definitely tops the one that I believe most people to know, and that is the habit of reading. The habit of reading. Now, most people won't see why that's important, but I think that has been one of the top habits that has completely changed my life. So when I tell you that all these things has happened over the course of a decade, it all started with reading books, right? Someone once said that there are two things in life that will help you become successful. That is the books that you read and the people that you meet, right? And all these informations are packed inside of, that's why I started writing books, because I figured that if I can start putting the value in here into a book, I can transfer to others. Now, the other aspect of it is the more books I write, the more money I earn, right? Mm-hmm. But for most people, they only rely on the education that they received decades ago, right? Maybe they graduated in 2008 and they've never picked up a book. Well, that's why most people are stuck in life, because they're not increasing their learning, right? Somebody else once said, the more you earn, the more you learn, the more you earn. So when you start picking up books about finances, about health, personal development, it stretches your capacity, right? So that's how you grow. That's probably, for example, Tony Robbins. We all know Tony Robbins today, but most people don't know that Tony Robbins read 700 books by the time he got to the 12th grade, right? But paid the price for that. So people see success and they think, hey, I just need to follow what they're doing, or I just need to, do this and do that. But no, you need to invest in here, right? Most people invest their time on social media. The information they get is, going through people's news feed, watching all the negativity going on around the world, watching CNN, CNBC. whatever you feed here is what your life will produce. So when you start reading, it changes everything.
That's so true. That's so true. So recommend some books. Okay, let's say you know, people are watching, people are like, okay, I'm ready. I need to change. I know I need to change my habits. I need to get something done. What would you recommend they read? What's the top two books you would recommend that they
So
read?
it depends on what area they want to grow in, right? If somebody's looking, if you've never done a business before and you're looking to start something, obviously the great classic is, you know, Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? Because that's like your introduction into business. If you're looking to start a business, it lays out the principles, the foundation that anybody needs to know. If you're looking at changing your mindset, how you think, you're talking about, you know, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, right? That's another classic. These are books that have literally changed millions of lives, right? So if you can start with that, if you're talking about changing your finances, obviously my books, 21 Habits of Highly Broke People, my recent book, How Poor People Think. I mean, these are basic principles that if you apply them, you will see results, right? If you're talking about areas of your health, I think there's a book titled The Daniel Plan, written by Rick Warren, a phenomenal book. You know, so it's so many books, Pastor Lenita, that one just need to figure out what area do I want to grow in, and you just start finding resources in that line.
Mm-hmm. I think that those are excellent suggestions. I would reiterate Think and Grow Rich. I think that's a great starting point for anybody that just wants to change the way they think about money and change the way they think about being successful, and change their relationship with money. I am of the opinion that people form a relationship with money from the time that they are a child and the way that they see their parents interact with money. And I think a lot of people have formed a relationship with money that says, that's for other people. And they formed a relationship with money that says money is scarce, that there's scarcity, right? Yeah. Eat all your food on that plate. Don't you know people starving? You know,
having money's not good. Money is evil.
Exactly. So I think that a good foundation for people is just to check your mindset about money. When the topic of money comes up, are you nervous? Are you tense? Are you strained? Check what you say to your children about money. Those are things that I think people need to do. Absolutely. To really discover how they actually think about money, because most of us don't realize that the way we think about money is not correct. We spiritualize things, and we have all kinds of sayings, you know, from our background. But if we really put them up against the light of scripture, we'll see that our thinking about money is wrong.
It's wrong. Absolutely.
Jesus never talked about money as a scarce resource. He never. Jesus never worried about money. No. He never worried about money. All he said was, go down to the river, get the fish, open its mouth. There'll be a coin in it. Anytime he needed money, he commanded it to come. He just commanded it to come. He wasn't stressed about money. And I think that we have to really look at the scripture critically, because it will give us insight to wealth. And so I would, in addition to the books that we both recommended, I recommended scripture. Look at how Jesus related to money. It was never a stress factor for him.
Not at all.
And I'll just speak for myself. Historically, our families have been so stressed about money until that stress mindset about money has become a habit. And we have to break it. If we're going to be people who handle wealth, I mean, real wealth, we have to change our relationship with money. Definitely. I am finding that there is a level that you get to in money. You have to get to a certain level in money before you realize that there are certain fears embedded in you. Because when you're managing little money, sometimes those fears don't show up. But when you're presented with opportunities to handle wealth at a level that your parents didn't, sometimes those fears show up. And those fears are a result of your relationship with money.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think it's important. I think it's really, really important for people to evaluate how they think about money critically. And you have to really think about the things you say about money. I'm a day late and $1 short. I'm broke. I personally never say I'm broke. I am not broke. I
Yeah.
personally never say I'm broke. I say I'm between blessings. I'm in between blessings right now. Or I say
Like that.
it's coming. I don't have it yet, but it's coming. But
Yes.
I have
The language matters.
never liked to hear people say I'm broke. You're not broke.
Yeah.
You are not broke. I hate to hear people say that. I think it's a demonic confession.
It is. Self
Yes.
prophecy.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So let's now I could keep on talking. Let's go on. Let's talk about the next thing. How does somebody change a habit? Let's say we realize that we have a bad financial habit or just a habit how do you change a habit?
Great, great question. Here's the first thing is to, number one, realize that you have a bad habit. Number two is never try to change multiple habits at the same time.
Okay, that's key.
Right? And that's the thing. Somebody just discovered that I have all these things. I'm spending wrong. I'm late. I'm always late. And you're trying to change everything at the same time. It doesn't work. Right? The third thing is what I call well, how can I phrase this? Changing a habit in increments.
Okay.
So talking about, let's use the issue of saving, for example. If you've never saved in your life, that in itself is a habit. Okay. Now to go from never saving to all of a sudden you want to start saving 10% of your income, that is tough for most people because you already have enough expenses to wipe out all your income. So ideally, I tell people that if you've never saved before, if it's not a habit for you, why not start with saving 1 or 2%? Because it's realistic, right? So we want to start doing with things that we know is achievable, something that we know we can do. When you start small and that one habit as already it's set in stone, as far as you saving 2%, then you can say, you know what, I think this is good, but now I can increase it to 4%. Once again, we're talking about increments. So when you go from doing nothing to now doing it incrementally, ultimately you can now get to the level where you say, you know what, now I can afford to do 10%. If you're talking about working out, you've never worked out in your life, or it's been 5 years, and all of a sudden you say you want to start jogging a mile every day. That's not realistic and it's not sustainable, right? So how about walking a quarter of a mile, not even jogging, right? So when you get the mindset of doing it little at a time and you've built that consistency, that's when you can now move to the next level. All right. So ideally, that's what I practice to change my habit. I start with a little, increase it until I get to the tipping point where I feel like this is where I should be.
Okay. Okay. I think that's really, really wise. I think that's really wise. And I think that everybody should remember that when it comes to their financial goals. I like the example that you use of, saving, starting to save or to save more. Key things that you said, incremental, start with something that is achievable. And I think sometimes you're right. People, you get excited and say, I need to change. I'm gonna stop being late. I'm gonna start saving. I'm gonna start investing. And you try to do all of that stuff at one time, and it can become overwhelming. So start with something that is achievable. Start with something that is measurable. Start with something that you can look back and you say, I did that. And then you can celebrate and encourage yourself to go on. I think that is really, really key. The other thing that I would say is in terms of how to change a habit, I think one thing that we all often forget is accountability.
Oh,
Somebody to keep you accountable, because when you're trying to make changes, there will be some pushback, and the pushback could come from your own flesh, right? The flesh wars against the spirit. So you say, I'm gonna eat better. Somebody gonna, your own flesh will fight back against that
right.
sometimes.
Exactly.
And so you have to find people that can hold you accountable, even for your financial goals. It's important to find somebody that can hold you accountable. It could be a financial advisor, it could be a pastor, it could be someone you trust that is mature. But sometimes when you want to make a change and you have been doing something for all of your adult life, you need something outside of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. to hold you accountable. So I would say accountability is another key thing about changing habits, especially financial habits. The other thing that we could talk about, but we just don't have time because we're coming up on the end of our time, is making those changes when your spouse has a different money language than you. That also can be that also can be a challenge.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's something to keep in mind as well. You need to come to some level of agreement. Your spouse may cause your goals to be a little less stringent if they're on the other end of the spectrum than you. But the key thing is get them involved.
Yeah.
And so if it takes being a little bit more lenient with your goal to get them involved, do it, because there's strength in numbers and there's power in agreement. It's more powerful if the two of you are in agreement than if you want to be all the way to the right extreme and you do it by yourself. So I give that quick bit of advice. We have a question from the viewers. And so the first question, by the way, if you're watching and you have a question, send it now because we're wrapping up on time. We start at 3 p.m. people, 3 p.m. Come on and be on time. Okay, the first question is this: how do you know the next big stock to buy at the earlier stage? For example, Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, etc. There are lots of people that missed these stocks while others knew ahead of time and bought these stocks. Hence, what are some of the industries you would encourage some of us to consider investing in? So there's actually two questions in that question. The first question is, how do you know, right? How do you know? How do you get ahead of the trend? And then the second one is, what would you advise people to invest in? What stocks would you advise people to invest in?
Sure. So the first question is, how do you know? It's really about having a vision, right? So for example, when Facebook first came out, or even Amazon, nobody thought Amazon was going to be big, right? Amazon started in an office inside of Jeff Bezos' house. You know, Microsoft was started inside of a garage. So an ideal person living in those times would have never thought that these little companies would be mega companies. So, but when you look at that point, at that phase when it first started, and kind of look into the future and say, hey, you know what, technology might be the thing that's going to be driving the future, then having that kind of vision will help you understand this is where I need to be. So for example, even during this time of coronavirus, when coronavirus hit and people start going on lockdown, a wise person would start looking at online platforms like Zoom, like, wait a minute, if we can't meet in person anymore, how else are people going to meet? Obviously now everybody's using Zoom. Guess what's going to happen to their shares? It's going through the roof because everybody needs what they have, right? When you talk about food or online ordering, you look at places like Amazon. So even though you might have missed the first wave, there are always opportunities for you to key in to ride the next wave, right? So while most people might not be able to participate or invest in these companies now due to the large, capital that's required, the question you want to start asking yourself is, post-COVID-19, what are some of the things that are going to be taken off? What are some of the things that will be wise to invest in now before, the next 2 months, the next 3 months, because you know that these companies are going to do well. Unfortunately, I don't necessarily tell people what stock to invest in because I'm not a financial advisor. But what I would say is, as a person who's looking to invest in something, you want to start taking the full responsibility of doing research as to say, hey, what companies are doing well now, right? Or what companies are going to be doing well in the next couple of months, and start following Yahoo Finance, right? Start researching on Google, stocks to invest in. And then once you get these companies, you now do your own research to find out if it's the right opportunity for you at this time.
Okay. All right. I think you answered that person's question. Last thing I want us to, while I'm waiting to see if anybody else has any other questions, last thing I want us to talk about, what habits did you have to cultivate to see success in your business? What habits did you have to cultivate to see success in your business?
Networking. one of my pastor once said, well, my pastor said it, and then somebody else said that your network will equal to your net worth. In other words, that's actually one of the habits in my book, associating with successful people.